It's never good for Rudy Giuliani when he's in the news, and he has been a couple of times over just the last 24 hours, involving both his actual connections to people who have now gone down for legal charges for almost exactly what this impeachment inquiry is about, and the revelation that up to about 2 years ago, there were further attempts to do almost the exact same thing. Donald Trump trying to break the law and being stopped at the last moment. So we're gonna start with that, and then we're gonna move into Rudy Giuliani's associates who have now been arrested. So let's start with Trump. Trump was apparently, he had apparently back in 2017 pressed then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to persuade the Justice Department to drop a criminal case against an Iranian-Turkish gold trader who was a client of Rudy Giuliani, according to 3 people familiar with the 2017 meeting in the Oval Office. So a couple interesting things about that. First of all, Rex Tillerson has previously said that Donald Trump tried to get him to do things that Rex then had to say that would be breaking the law. But so far as I know, he hasn't given many examples of that. This is an example of that. The other thing that's interesting is that this is like the ultimate 2019 politics Mad Libs. You've got Trump, Rex Tillerson, the Iranians, the Turks, traitors, we have a traitor in the Oval Office, and Rudy Giuliani, all getting wrapped into one story. So Rudy Giuliani was working not only with Donald Trump, but also as the private lawyer of other people, including this individual, this Iranian-Turkish gold trader, who was being investigated for breaking the law, which we'll get into. And Trump tried to use the US State Department to pressure that investigation to be shut down. So you have corruption that's being investigated, and Trump tries to shut down the investigation into that corruption. That's weird. I'm sure that won't turn into a gigantic story in a couple of years. It's the thing, like, we've always said that the right exercises projection. They say that the left is doing what they're actually doing. But now, even in terms of the crimes, it's all projection down to the individual countries involved in it. So Tillerson didn't do it, by the way, importantly. He refused, arguing that it would constitute interference in an ongoing investigation of the traitor. This is Reza Zarrab, according to the people who talked to Bloomberg about this story. They said other participants in the Oval Office were shocked by the request. Quick note, if you're in these meetings, stop being shocked and horrified by them and start actually doing something. Don't wait 2 years to reveal what you were so shocked and aghast at. Actually stop it then, reveal it then. Just a little request for people currently operating in the Oval Office. But let's continue. Tillerson immediately repeated his objections to then Chief of Staff John Kelly in a hallway conversation just outside the Oval Office, emphasizing that the request would be illegal. Okay, so who is this individual? Why was Trump trying to get the State Department to shut down the investigation? So Zarrab was being prosecuted in federal court in New York at the time on charges of evading US sanctions against Iran's nuclear program. Again, this could not be the more perfect investigation for them to try to shut down. Let's see, he had hired former Attorney General Michael Mukasey and Giuliani, who has said he reached out repeatedly to US officials to seek a diplomatic solution for his client outside the courts. Zarrab's release was a high priority for Turkish President Erdogan until the gold trader agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in New York. So again, we've now wrapped in sanctions against Iran over their nuclear program. We've now got Erdogan involved in this. It's just everything all in one. It's like the perfect parfait. You combine unlike things into something that's delicious in its entirety. So Zarrab later pled guilty to the investigation that they were trying to shut down, and testified against Mehmet Hakan Atilla, who was eventually convicted of helping Iran evade economic sanctions on literally billions of dollars of oil revenue, and served 28 months in US prison before returning to Turkey in July to a hero's welcome. Turkey has so far managed to avoid US penalties over the sanctions evasion scheme. So this guy was living in Turkey, helping Iran to evade sanctions on oil revenue, which was obviously economically beneficial to Turkey. It was benefiting them too. He was benefiting personally, it was benefiting Turkey. Trump tried to stop the investigation into one of his associates, and somehow the fact that even though the individuals went down legally for what they did, there's been nothing bad that's happened to Erdogan or Turkey. Weird how that works out. So Donald Trump, who tried to get involved, also hasn't had any sort of consequences for it. So anyway, in terms of Giuliani and how this might hurt him, after all, this was his client. It's ostensibly the only reason that Trump would be trying to get involved was either personal loyalty to Rudy Giuliani, one of his closest associates over the past few years, or potentially involvement for the benefit of Erdogan, since Trump, of course, has real estate dealings, already had them at that point in Istanbul. In a phone interview this month, Giuliani initially denied that he'd ever raised Zarrab's case with Trump, but later said he might have done so. So we find out now that he definitely did so. But he tried to evade any sort of consequences for that in the short term. But that's not the only thing that involves Rudy Giuliani in sort of internal corruption to the White House right now. We found out this morning that 2 Soviet-born businessmen with ties to Rudy Giuliani were arrested Wednesday on federal charges of violating campaign finance laws through a 6-figure donation they facilitated to President Donald Trump's official super PAC. Parnas and Fruman, these are the 2 individuals, are charged with making illegal straw donations, including a $325,000 contribution to the group America First Action. So as you'll see, this also will involve Ukraine because of course it has to. And so these 2 Soviet-born businessmen who are working to benefit clients in Ukraine are donating hundreds of thousands of dollars under a corporation that had been set up like a month before to benefit Donald Trump under the auspices of the group America First Action, because America is definitely what was coming first to these individuals when they were trying to evade campaign finance laws. So let's get a little bit more information about them, because there's one more element that again draws these new scandals into the sort of meta international conversation we've been having. Parnas and Fruman, both born in the former Soviet Union and currently working in Florida's real estate market, were reportedly at the center of a plan to install a friendlier management team at the helm of Ukrainian gas company Naftogaz. So they were trying to break campaign finance laws, thus meddling in an election by channeling money to a pro-Trump super PAC. And what they were doing while they were doing that was trying to make sure that there was a more corruption-friendly management team at a Ukrainian gas company. The only thing that's not in this story is literally Hunter Biden, but all of the other deals are here. And this again, this goes back, they didn't start doing this a week ago. This whole time, since we found out everything about Ukraine and Hunter Biden and the investigation and Sondland and everything, Giuliani and Trump knew that they'd been involved in this, that these were their associates. Again, this is Giuliani's close associates. These are his fixers who were investigating Biden in Ukraine. All that time, they knew that they were actually the ones trying to make sure that more corruption was going on in Ukrainian gas companies. It is just too perfect. It's self-parody. Maybe The Onion is doing scoops for Bloomberg now. I honestly don't know. It's just too perfect. But let me give you a little bit more information. The Southern District of New York, in their indictment of Parnas and Fruman, this is one of the sort of money sections. Lev Parnas, Igor Fruman, David Herrera, Andrei Kukushnik, the defendants conspired to circumvent the federal laws against foreign interference or foreign influence by engaging in a scheme to funnel foreign money to candidates for federal and state office so that the defendants could buy potential influence with candidates, campaigns, and the candidates' governments. We already knew everything we needed for these people to go down. Now, I can't say at the end of the day that Donald Trump had personally worked with these people. I haven't seen that evidence yet. Perhaps that will come out as discovery and the court process goes on. But these were Rudy Giuliani's guys. Donald Trump sent not a diplomat, not the State Department, to Ukraine to do this sort of work of generating dirt to benefit him in the election. He sent his personal lawyer, and his personal lawyer was working with these 2 individuals who in the US and Ukraine were breaking the law, campaign finance, all of that to influence elections. It's too much at a certain point. It's like we have enough. We don't need more details, but more details are indeed coming in. And just because I like to occasionally touch on Rudy Giuliani's sort of reliability, fitness as a legal representative for individuals, Kenneth Vogel summed up 2 weeks in Rudy Giuliani's messaging around these 2 individuals by saying 2 weeks ago, Rudy Giuliani minimized the campaign finance issues facing his Ukrainian researchers, telling me, quote, "I referred them to a campaign finance expert who pretty much resolved it. Yesterday, they're arrested on campaign finance charges." So I don't know how he resolved it. Maybe he reported them for breaking the law. But I can say that whether it was part of his formal advice or not, they didn't just they were just sitting in their office when they were suddenly taken by the Southern District of New York. No, they were stopped at Dulles International Airport as they attempted to leave the country. So they understood what they had done. They understood the legal ramifications, perhaps through conversation with their legal representatives, and they were attempting to evade justice by fleeing the United States. Thankfully, they were stopped beforehand. You can expect that this story, these stories, all of this nonsense, this big muddy ball of corruption is probably going to shed more light on what was going on, but Jesus, we already have so much. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.